Hey guys, tonight we're heading straight into the thin, bitter air above the Andes Mountains in 1972, where your plane, yes, your plane is about to rip in half at 18,000 feet. You're still buckled in when it happens, still sipping soda from a tiny plastic cup, when the tail section vanishes behind you like it was never there to begin with. Then colds, unimaginable cold, screaming wind, bodies flying past. You're still alive, but not for long, or at least, that's what you'd think. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't remember the fall as much as you remember the sound, that low, grinding roar of the fuselage dragging across a glacier, tearing itself apart on impact. You feel yourself tossed like a rag doll, but somehow the snow swallows you more gently than expected. And then, everything stops. The silence is heavy, not peaceful, ominous. You open your eyes, barely able to believe you're alive. Around you, twisted metal and blood-spattered snow form a grotesque puzzle of what was once an airplane. Bodies lie half buried. The tail and wings are gone. You're sitting in the remains of what used to be Flight 571 of the Uruguayan Air Force, carrying a rugby team, their friends, and family members, 45 people in all. At least, that's how many boarded in Montevideo. The air is razor thin. Breathing feels like sipping oxygen through a straw. The cold is sharp and total. You try to stand, but your legs feel like rubber. Someone screams for help. Others are completely still. One guy is trying to stop a friend's bleeding with a rugby sock. The pilot gone, co-pilot crushed in the cockpit. You crawl toward the sound of crying, half hoping it's your teammate, half fearing it's your own imagination. But no, there are survivors, around 30 of you. You start to gather, a dazed congregation of the barely alive. Some have broken limbs. One has a skull fracture. Someone's leg is almost severed. You're 24 hours from the nearest town on foot. But that's irrelevant, because you don't know that yet. All you see are endless ridges of white, like someone dumped you inside a snow globe and shook it hard. The Andes are unforgiving, and so is altitude. You're at 12,000 feet now. That means your body starts to burn more energy just to survive, and there's no food, not even in the cargo hold, which snapped off somewhere back down the mountain. But here's the weird part right now. You're not panicking. Not exactly. You're in survival mode, running on adrenaline. You help drag the wounded into the hulk of the broken fuselage. You press coats against gashes, tear up seat cushions for bandages, and make a pact without words you're going to try to live. That night, you learn what cold really is. The temperature drops below 20 degrees. The fuselage offers no heat, no insulation. You cram together like sardines, hugging each other not out of affection, but because your body heat is the only thing between you and hypothermia. You think help will arrive soon. Planes have radios, after all, right? Well, funny thing, yours doesn't work. The antenna snapped off in the crash. You can't call out. The search planes, if they come, will have to see you, but from the air. Your broken white plane looks exactly like the snow it crashed into. Somehow, you sleep, maybe an hour, maybe 5 minutes. Time stretches and snaps like elastic. One guy wakes up with frostbite on his nose. Another hasn't moved since nightfall. He doesn't move again. By the second day, the first arguments start. Not big ones. Not yet, just whispers. Who's in charge? Should we climb the nearest ridge? Someone says, he saw a river from the air. Someone else says, it's just a glacier. No one knows for sure. And then, on day 3, you notice something strange. A feeling inside you. Not emotion, something lower. Your stomach. It growls like an animal. The rations, the few chocolate bars, a couple bottles of wine are already gone. Shared, measured, argued over, and now, just memory. You stare at the snowbank. Some of you try to melt snow in metal scraps to drink, careful not to burn your lips. One guy swears he saw a bird he didn't. Another tries to fish through snow, looking for luggage, maybe a stray sandwich. No luck. Your body starts to consume itself. Muscle, fat, strength. Your legs ache when you stand. Your brain fogs. And still, you wait. Historically, high-altitude crashes are almost always deadly. Survivors rare, even in modern times. Rescue missions fail because of terrain and weather. In 1972, there's no GPS, no thermal imaging, just maps and hope. Now, here's a quirky fact. Locals in Chile and Argentina have long told tales of ancient Incan trails winding through these mountains, narrow paths only visible in certain light, meant for messengers running barefoot across snow. Some say those old paths still exist, hidden beneath avalanches and time, but tonight, they're no help to you. By now, bodies lie under snow blankets. You don't talk about them. You can't. One of them was your best friend. Another was someone's brother. It's easier to think they're just sleeping. You want to believe that. The days stretch. Your lips crack. Your fingers blister. Still no planes. And still no food. Some of you pray. Some curse. Some just sit and stare. Historians still argue whether it was day 4 or day 5 when the first person said it out loud, what you were all secretly thinking. We may have to eat the bodies. Just 6 words, but they land like a bomb. You feel sick. You want to shout, to deny, to run away, but there's nowhere to go. And something inside you, something primal, doesn't flinch, because deep down, part of you knows it's true. And once you've allowed that thought in, well, there's no going back. But no one moves yet. Not tonight. Not in the dark. You curl up against the wall of the fuselage, your breath a frozen ghost in the air. And you wait, because tomorrow, things get worse. The sun rises, not like a warm hug, but like a brutal spotlight. The snow reflects it straight into your retinas, so bright it makes you squint, even with your eyes shut. You're not just cold now, you're exhausted, sore, and sunburned on the inside of your nostrils, of all places. And the mountain, it still doesn't care. You trudge out of the fuselage like an inmate stepping into yard time. Everyone moves slowly now, like they're underwater. The altitude does that to you. It siphons away your energy like a quiet thief. You're still hoping to see planes overhead. Maybe today, maybe they'll spot you. But instead, you see vultures. No, really, they're high, circling, Probably Andean condors, actually the world's largest flying birds. They can smell carrion from miles away. You wonder, absurdly, if they know your name. You dig, not for treasure, not for food. You dig through snow, scraping with trays, seat cushions, your own hands, anything you can find. You're searching for luggage, a mirror, a battery, someone's asthma medication, anything useful. You find a bottle of cologne, and for one delirious second, think, could I drink this? You don't. Others aren't so cautious. One guy finds a half-eaten candy bar buried under a seat and chews it like it's filet mignon. Another drinks melted snow out of a shoe. And still, the question lingers, haunts. Really? What happens when there's nothing left? That afternoon, a group gathers quietly near the tail end of the fuselage. The conversation is low and tense. The bodies, the frozen ones, they're still there, preserved, not decaying, just lying in the snow like statues of people you used to know. You try not to look, but then the wind shifts. You smell something not rot, not really, but something off, like copper and ice. One guy says it's the smell of death. Another says it's the smell of hunger tricking your brain. Either way, it turns your stomach. You sit on a suitcase and stare out at the ridges. The Andes stretch on like a frozen labyrinth. Some peaks shimmer in the distance, so tall they look like they pierce the stratosphere. There's no path, no trail, and every direction looks exactly like the last. That's when you realize you're completely, utterly lost, and yet, one guy, Nando, is already thinking ahead. His mother died in the crash. His sister lasted 2 days. Now he's all fury and bone. He tells you, flat out, that if no rescue comes, he'll walk out over the mountains somehow, some way. You nod, partly because you admire him, partly because you don't want to argue with someone that determined. But the truth is, you can barely walk 10 steps without gasping. The idea of climbing over peaks suicide. A few hours later, you hear something, a plane. It's faint at first, then louder. You all burst out of the fuselage, waving bright cloth, metal scraps, anything shiny. You scream, you jump, you cry. The plane flies over, then keeps going. It doesn't even wobble, doesn't even hint that it saw you. That night, the group is quiet. You sit beside someone you're not sure who anymore. You've stopped keeping track, and you both stare at the snowbank where the dead are resting. It's not a matter of if now. It's when the human body can survive, at most, 30 to 40 days without food. But in this cold, this altitude, you'll be lucky to last half that. And the thing is, you're not just starving, you're decaying too, slowly, from the inside. You remember a line from biology class, something about how your body burns muscle after it finishes off your fat. The heart's a muscle, isn't it? You wonder how long until yours is next. You try to sleep, but the mountain won't let you. You keep hearing whispers in the dark, arguments, tears, somebody praying. By morning, a decision has been made. The bodies will be used, not desecrated, not eaten in some wild, gory frenzy. No, used. That's how one of the medical students phrases it. These were friends, yes, family, but now they are something else, a potential salvation, a sacrifice. You don't like the way he says it, but you don't argue. You think about the story of the Donner Party, trapped in the Sierra Nevadas in 1846. You remember reading that some of them did the same. Back then, it sounded like horror. Now it sounds like Tuesday. And here's your first real emotional sucker punch when the time comes. No one wants to be first. You all hesitate. You all wait for someone else to make the move, to say the prayer, to break the barrier between impossible and necessary. It's one of the rugby players who finally does it. Quietly, no drama. He slips away to a snowbank, kneels, and takes a piece of what was once a thigh. No one watches, no one stops him. Later, he tells you he cried while chewing. Historians still argue whether this act was done out of panic or reason. Some say it was inevitable. Others argue it showed a terrifying rationality that humans, when cornered, become coldly efficient. Either way, the seal is broken. You wait one more day. Then, your turn comes. You walk out to the snowbank, palms sweating even in sub-zero air. You choose someone you knew, not a stranger. It feels better. Somehow, you use a shard of glass to cut through fabric, flesh. You take only a small piece. You don't look at it. You warm it in your hands, then your mouth. It's chewy, like beef jerky, cold and tasteless. Your stomach rebels, but doesn't reject it. You swallow and live. It's a strange thing to realize. Survival doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like shame, like guilt, and yet like clarity. Because now you know you're not going to die today. And that is something a few others follow. Not many, not yet. But the silence around the bodies changes. It's no longer sacred. It's practical, like a storehouse, a place you visit when you must. Still, you tell yourself I'll stop as soon as rescue comes. Tomorrow, maybe, or the next day, unless it snows again. And oh, it will. You wake up to silence. Again. Not the peaceful kind, the sort that presses against your ears like cotton soaked in dread. Your breath hangs in front of your face, frozen in place for a beat too long before it vanishes. Another night survived. But you're starting to question if survival is still the right word. What do you call it when you're just existing? There's frost on your eyebrows. Your lips are cracked open, little wounds that sting every time you whisper. Around you, the others stir slowly, like reluctant ghosts. And then you hear the crunch. Someone outside, walking across the snow. You crawl out of the fuselage, wincing as the cold bites your palms. You squint into the glare, and your heart sinks. The sky is the wrong color. Gray, heavy, pregnant with something awful. It starts snowing just after breakfast, which, let's be honest, is a word you now use for a chunk of frozen protein about the size of a matchbox. The flakes fall gently at first, like they're mocking you. By noon, it's a full storm. White out. The mountain disappears. You hunker down in the fuselage. 26 bodies crammed into a space meant for a dozen. There's no sound but the wind and the occasional cough. Your body aches. Everything is damp. You dream of warm bread, hot showers, and the feeling of walking barefoot on grass. Things that feel impossibly far away. Someone cracks a joke about snow cones. You laugh too hard. It's the first time you've made any noise in hours. That night, someone doesn't wake up. He's curled in the fetal position, eyes open, covered in a thin film of ice. There's a quiet ritual now. No one screams, no one sobs. You just nod, lift, and carry. Make room. Cover him in snow. Let him join the others. He was the 11th to go. You start losing track of the days. Not just losing, you actively stop counting. The cold has a way of scrambling your sense of time. It's always either morning or nothing, either snowing or not. And then, day 10, or maybe it's 11, you get news. Not from a radio, not from a rescue team, from a piece of aluminum foil. One of the guys, Roy, had made a crude antenna out of seat wiring and bits of wreckage. You all thought he was nuts, but it works, sort of. The radio crackles, static, then voices, Spanish. It takes a few seconds to understand. Then someone translates. The search has been called off. They believe you're all dead. It hits like a punch to the ribs. You'd held out so long, suffered so much, because you thought someone out there was looking. That help was on its way. That hope had a heartbeat. But now you're ghosts. Officially, no one's coming. People react differently. Some scream. Some go completely still. One guy punches the wall until his knuckles split open. You just sit and stare at the floor. But something shifts after that. If no one's coming, you will have to go. It's Nando again. He says it like he's been waiting for this moment. His sister and mother are gone. He's skin and sinew and quiet fury now. He grabs another guy, Roberto, and says they'll leave as soon as the snow stops. You watch them from across the fuselage, sitting under a broken window. You're not going with them, not yet, but you admire them. They look almost mythical in that moment. Two frostbitten Spartans planning to hike through hell. Still, there are practical things to handle. They'll need supplies, warm clothes, something to carry water, and yes, food, which means more cuts. You try not to watch as someone uses a shard of windshield to separate flesh from bone. You tell yourself it's meat, just meat, no name, no story. But then, someone whispers the name, and you remember his laugh. That's the worst part. You've become a mechanic of grief. Grief in parts and pieces. One of the others, a former medical student, suggests drying strips in the sun to make them last longer. He says it clinically, like he's talking about preserving fruit. You're both disturbed and grateful for the practicality. Here's your historical fun fact to momentarily distract your brain. The ancient Quechua people who once ruled these mountains used to preserve meat by freeze-drying it on the peaks. They called it charqui. That word gave us jerky. Congratulations. You've become a living anthropology exhibit. And yet, weirdly, life begins to organize itself. You form teams, water melting team, watch team, signal flare improv team. There's a job for everyone. Purpose makes the days move faster. Just a little. Someone even finds an old transistor radio that picks up local news. That night, the voice of a Chilean newscaster crackles through, talking about a horse race. A horse race. The world still turns. People still bet on animals. Life continues. And you up here are frozen in amber. Historians still debate whether this phase, the middle days, was the hardest. Not the crash, not the climb, but the slow decay, the emotional erosion, because by now, the novelty of terror has worn off. You're not shocked anymore, just empty. You think you see lights one night, flares. You run outside, barefoot in snow, but it's just moonlight on ice. One guy breaks down, starts talking to someone who's not there, keeps calling him coach. Another admits to keeping a piece of chocolate hidden the whole time. You want to hate him. You want to hit him. Instead, you ask for a crumb. He gives it to you. The next morning, he's dead. That day, you sit next to one of the bodies and talk to it. You apologize. You thank them. You cry. It helps. A little. Later, someone plays a song on a tiny harmonica they smuggled in their pocket. It's off-key, short, barely more than a jingle, but it sounds like salvation. You fall asleep that night with the echo of it still in your head. But dawn brings something new, an avalanche. It hits like a freight train made of ice and silence. You don't even hear it coming. 1 second you're dozing, your breath fogging up the bit of metal you've curled against. The next, everything shifts, a low rumble, deep and menacing, like the growl of some ancient beast buried beneath the snow. And then impact. The whole fuselage groans like it's being crushed in a vise. Snow pours in, not like a gentle drift, but a violent wave. It punches into the broken windows, rips through the torn roof, suffocates the space in seconds. You don't have time to scream. You barely have time to register what's happening before snow fills your mouth, your ears, your lungs, then darkness. When you come to, everything's still, utterly still. There's no sound, no air, no light, just pressure. You're buried. You wiggle your fingers, they move. Your legs once pinned, but you're alive. You think, probably, you can't breathe. You claw upward, blind, desperate, until your fingers break into air. Sweet, thin, freezing air. You suck it down like it's made of gold. Eventually, others dig you out, or maybe you dig them out. It blurs. Everyone is white, covered in powder, coughing, crying. You take a roll call. Someone's missing. Actually, 8 people are missing. They're still buried, trapped under the weight. A few were crushed instantly. The others, well, you hope it was instant. You spend hours digging, bare hands, scraps of aluminum, shouts, please. At one point, someone screams they can hear knocking. You all scramble, but by the time you reach them, it's too late. You lose Numa. You lose Liliana. You lose one of the older boys who used to sing rugby chants in the morning. Their names sting your throat when you say them. After the avalanche, the fuselage becomes a tomb, not metaphorically, literally, a frozen crypt sealed with snow and silence. You seal the windows with luggage and clothes, trying to keep warmth in. You now sleep sitting up, because lying down reminds you of burial. And still you go on. You're at day 17 now. Or is it 20? Because you're not sure. Your stomach is quieter these days. Not because it's full, because it's given up. You chew slowly now, methodically. Not just the meat, but the guilt, the questions. What if someone back home knew? What would they say? Would they understand? Or would they turn from you like you're something other, a monster? That night, someone tells a story about a woman who survived in the woods by eating bark and bugs. You all agree that's noble. That's nature. That's okay. But what you're doing, it's different. And yet, there's a weird peace settling in, as if your minds, finally broken, have stopped resisting. This is just the new reality. And here's a quirky bit for you. One guy starts keeping a journal. Not about what you eat, or who died, or how many days have passed. He writes about dreams, what he wants to do, a ski trip, a wedding, pizza night in Montevideo. He even sketches out the menu. It becomes a ritual. At night, you gather to hear him read dreams out loud in a place where dreams feel like blasphemy. But it helps. It gives shape to hope. One morning, the clouds finally break. You step outside, blinking into the sun like a creature that's forgotten how to see. The snow sparkles. For a moment, it's beautiful, and that's when Nando speaks again. He and Roberto are ready. Their plan is simple in theory. Suicidal in practice, climb the mountain to the west. It looks impossibly high, like a wall between you and the sky. But they believe what's on the other side isn't just rocks and snow, it's life. You help them prepare. Strip wire for bootlaces. Sew rags into makeshift mittens. You give them food, not much, just enough to last a few days. The dried meat has become currency now, a rationed miracle before they leave. Nando hugs each of you. He's smaller now, hollowed out, but his eyes burn. You say goodbye without saying it. As they vanish into the whiteness, you feel something tug at your chest. Hope, terror, both. Historians still argue whether this climb was truly rational. The weather, the elevation, the lack of maps, it should have been impossible. But maybe the mind, when broken just right, becomes fearless. Back in the fuselage, the days stretch long and tight. Every hour is a question. Have they made it? Are they still alive? You listen to the radio. Nothing. You watch the horizon. Nothing. Then, 3 days in, a storm rolls through. Wind like a banshee, howling across the ridges. Snow slams into the fuselage in waves. You wonder if it's happening again. Another avalanche, another burial, but the fuselage holds. You pass the time telling stories. One guy starts carving faces into bits of luggage plastic. Another writes a play, a comedy. If you can believe it, and slowly, you start planning again, not for escape, but for survival. Long term, you talk about rationing, about boiling snow more efficiently. Someone suggests building a signal fire with engine parts, but none of it matters if Nando doesn't come back. One night, you sit by the window and count stars. You find 5 before your eyes blur from cold. You imagine Nando seeing the same sky, somewhere beyond that western ridge. You whisper a little prayer to the mountain. The next day, someone claims they saw footprints up on the ridge. You rush out, climb a bit, scan the snow. Nothing, just shadows and false hope. Back inside, you cry into your sleeve, quietly, like you're trying to apologize for still being alive. Then, 5 days later, 6 since they left, a voice crackles on the radio. Survivors? Found. You don't believe it at first. Can't. But the voice repeats. A Chilean shepherd saw 2 men staggering out of the snow. One of them collapsed. The other kept walking. You collapse. 2, but from relief. They made it. Nando made it. Help is coming. You don't remember leaping up. You just are up on your feet, knocking over what little gear you have, shoving aside someone's frozen boot. Your heart is punching your ribs like it's trying to escape. The radio still crackles. Someone yells, "Say that again," but it's mostly static now. Doesn't matter. You all heard it. They found them. You scream. You all scream. It's a strange, wild sound, part laughter, part weeping, part animal howling. For a moment, the mountain listens, and then the sound fades, swallowed by wind and snow. But your chest, it stays burning. You wait. You wait 1 hour, then 2, then 12. You wait while the sun climbs lazily over the peaks, casting long shadows like frozen fingers. You wait while the sky goes orange, then pink, then black. No one comes. Not yet. Hope, it turns out, is just another hunger. And now that you've tasted it, you're starving again. Every sound outside the crunch of shifting snow, the flap of loose canvas becomes a maybe, a possibility. The next day passes in a daze. You clean. It's absurd. Really sweeping snow off the fuselage floor, stacking up scraps of cloth like they're going to matter. But it keeps your hands moving. You even shave, with a broken mirror shard and shaking fingers. It's the first time in over 2 months. The act feels sacred. And then, on the second morning, just as you're chewing another miserable chunk of the unnameable, someone screams, a helicopter. You run outside, trip, faceplant into snow. Doesn't matter, because there it is. There it is. A Chilean Air Force Bell UH-1 helicopter, wobbling slightly in the thin air, coming in low. The noise is deafening. It's the sweetest, ugliest sound you've ever heard. You wave your arms, but they've already seen you. The door opens. A soldier leans out, mouth covered, eyes wide. Shock, sympathy, probably a bit of nausea. You can't blame him. He throws down a package blankets, food, water. You grab it like a wild animal. You rip it open. The water is warm from the engine heat. It tastes like heaven. Not everyone gets to leave today. There's too much snow, not enough lift. The pilot points and mimics weight too heavy. So they take the sickest ones first. You volunteer to stay. You're strongish, sort of, maybe, when the chopper lifts off, carrying 6 of your friends away. You watch it rise like something holy. The noise fades, and the silence rushes back in. But now it feels different, not empty, just waiting. Rescue teams arrive the next day. Soldiers, doctors, journalists. Too many people, too many questions. You don't want to talk. You want to sleep for 6 years. You want to sit under a tree. You want to touch your mom's face. But they ask anyway. What happened? How did you survive? What did you eat, you freeze? That question, that one's a landmine. Someone else answers, vaguely, carefully. We did what we had to, that night, while the others are airlifted down. You sit by the fire with one of the doctors. He hands you a piece of bread, real bread. It's soft, warm, smells like yeast and mercy. You hold it for a long time before eating it, almost like you're afraid it's a dream. The doctor says something unexpected. You're lucky. The last avalanche we responded to. No one made it. At least you'll walk out of here. But you don't feel lucky. You feel muted, like someone turned the world's volume down, just for you. Still, you ride in the next chopper, over the mountains, over the crash site, over 2 months of suffering. And when you land in Santiago, the cameras are already there. Reporters swarm you. Lights flash. Someone hands you a coat. Another asks if you're hungry. You nod. But when they bring you steak, steaming and perfect, your stomach curls. You push the plate away. You sleep in a real bed that night, with sheets, pillows. You weep into the fabric like it's a friend. And then the interviews begin. They want your story. Everyone does. Newspapers, radio shows, TV crews from 5 countries. But you don't give it to them. Not the real story. Not yet. There's still a war inside you. Back home in Montevideo, crowds gather to cheer as you step off the plane. They chant your name. Someone throws flowers. You don't know how to feel about it. You visit your family. You try to be normal. You can't. Not yet. The mirror doesn't recognize you. You meet the families of the ones who didn't make it. That's the hardest part. The guilt gnaws at you. You think of every face, every body, every choice, and then one day it leaks. A journalist publishes a quote from a doctor, something about unusual survival methods. The word cannibalism appears. The public explodes. Some people cry. Some scream. Some call you monsters. Others call you saints. There are debates on TV. Church leaders weigh in. School kids write essays. Historians still argue whether this reveal was inevitable, whether it should have been kept secret longer or told immediately. You avoid the news, but eventually you do talk on your own terms. A priest, a thoughtful, kind man gathers a few of you together. He asks what really happened. You tell him, and to your surprise, he nods. He doesn't condemn you. He listens, then he says, "Survival is not sin." That line becomes your armor. Still, the debate rages for weeks. There's your quirky tidbit for the night a few tabloids ran wild with it. One claimed you turned the fuselage into a barbecue pit. Another said you'd started a cult. None of it true. Eventually, the storm passes. People get bored, move on. Some even apologize. And slowly, the world lets you return. Not to who you were. That person's gone. But to someone new, someone rebuilt. The mountain gave you back to the world, but not without a cost. And now you carry that cost quietly. Every day. Sometimes when it snows, you still flinch. But then you remember the moment that helicopter appeared. The rotors chopping hope back into your world. And you breathe. You settle back into your old life. But it doesn't fit the same way it used to. Your bed feels too soft. Your house too big. Meals too frequent. You find yourself rationing food out of habit. Hiding bits of bread in your pockets like a nervous child. You sleep with the window cracked open, even in winter, because silence now feels heavier than wind. At first, everyone treats you like a hero. Strangers stop you on the street. Teachers cry when you walk into your old school. Someone even offers to name a street after you who once gnawed on a frozen belt because you were too ashamed to reach for the alternative. But admiration is a fickle thing. The newspapers start publishing editorials. Philosophers weigh in. Where is the line between survival and savagery, they ask. Would you have done it? People argue at dinner tables, in churches, on talk shows. Someone leaves an anonymous note on your doorstep. It reads, "You should have died like a man, not lived like an animal." You throw it away, but the words stick like frostbite. And yet, not everyone judges. A woman approaches you at a cafe, middle-aged, kind eyes. She says softly, "My son would have wanted you to live." Her son didn't make it out. You hugged him once when he was crying after the avalanche. Moments like that, unexpected, full of grace, they keep you breathing. You start talking more with your fellow survivors. You hold each other up like veterans of a private war. Some of you go back to the crash site. Years later, there's a simple cross there now, and bits of twisted metal. You bring flowers, letters, quiet apologies, and eventually, a book comes out, alive. The title is simple, the contents, not so much. It lays everything bare, not just the cold facts, but the ugliness, the choices, the prayers whispered into frost-covered hands. It shocks the world, but more than that, it invites them in to understand, to imagine, to feel. You help promote it, nervously at first, but after one interview, you look into the camera and say, I did what I had to do so I could hug my mother again. You tear up. So does the interviewer. And slowly, something shifts. People stop calling you a survivor. They start calling you something else human. Historians still debate the broader meaning of your ordeal. Some say it was a lesson in group dynamics, a study in psychological endurance. Others call it a spiritual allegory, resurrection by fire and ice. And some, frankly, just focus on the gory details because that's what sells. But those who really listen, they understand something deeper, that it wasn't just the cold that killed. It was waiting. It was wondering if anyone would ever come. That psychological ice, that's what broke people, more than starvation or frostbite. You remember nights when someone would mutter a joke into the darkness, and you'd all laugh, not because it was funny, but because laughter was the only proof that the world still existed outside the mountain. There's your fringe tidbit. By the way, one guy believed he saw angels in the snow. Not metaphorically. Actually, he claimed they hovered just outside the fuselage when he was close to death. Pale wings, blank faces, silent. You never saw them, but some nights you wish you had. You begin giving talks not often, but enough. Schools, mostly. You keep it PG. No gruesome stuff, just the truth. We made a pact to help each other live. We weren't stronger or braver. We just held on at one talk. A boy raises his hand and asks, were you scared? You pause, then say, every single day. He nods, and you can tell he gets it. You visit the families again. Over the years, some invite you in, others can't. You respect both. One mother keeps a framed photo of her son beside your picture. She says, it helps me pretend he's still part of something. You cry in her kitchen. She cries too. Then you both drink tea and sit quietly. The silence is warm this time. Eventually, the world moves on. There are new disasters, new headlines, but somehow your story stays. It becomes a cultural reference point. Movies, novels, college ethics classes. People still ask, would you have done it? You've stopped trying to answer, because until you're there, until your lips crack from thirst, and your hands shake from hunger, and your mind forgets the color green you don't know, you hope you'd survive. You hope you'd help someone else survive. That's the better question anyway. Your friend Nando becomes a public figure, the face of your survival. He's good at it, charming, eloquent, still intense. He writes a book too. You help with that. It's honest, beautiful, and sometimes brutal. He says once, when I climbed that mountain, I left part of myself up there. You nod. You all did. And yet, you live. You marry. You have children. You build something resembling peace. Some nights you wake up in sweat, heart racing, sure you're still under snow. But then you hear the hum of the fridge, a child breathing softly down the hall, your spouse's hand finding yours in the dark. You are here, you are home, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You go back to the Andes again, one last time, on the 20th anniversary. You hike part way. You stop at the cross. It's quiet, crisp. Birds chirp, actual birds, not just wind pretending to be alive. You sit for hours, say a few names out loud. You say thank you, you say sorry. And when you stand up, your knees creak and your breath is tight. But you walk down the slope with a strange smile, because against all odds, you gotta grow old, because you promised someone you would, and because some stories aren't meant to be buried no matter how deep the snow gets. You'd think after all these years, the world would stop asking questions, but the questions keep coming. They just change shape. Now it's not. Did you really eat the bodies, but how did it affect you? How do you carry something like that? You want to shrug and say, like a heavy coat on a warm day. But the truth is, it's more like a second skin. You don't wear it. You are it. You try to explain that the decision wasn't made in some dramatic, candlelit council. No somber vote, no blood pact, just silence, cold, stomachs turning inside out, eyes not meeting. And then someone moved, and you followed, because death was there, grinning through cracked lips. And if you didn't fight for life, it would win. You remember exactly what that first bite felt like. Not the taste that's gone, but the moment, the internal quake, the invisible line that broke beneath your feet. You didn't cry. You didn't scream. You just chewed. And in a weird way, that was mercy. Because if you'd fully grasped what you were doing, if you'd let your soul catch up to your body in that moment, you might have stopped breathing then and there. You speak of it sometimes, carefully, at survivor conferences. Yes, those exist. You and other disaster survivors, plane crashes, earthquakes, hostage crises gather in dim hotel ballrooms and share sandwiches and stories. You swap notes on PTSD like war veterans. You learn that trauma wears many coats: guilt, insomnia, hyper-awareness. One man, struck by lightning and surviving, admits he now flinches every time the microwave beeps. You laugh, but it's not mean. It's knowing. Some people think you were broken on that mountain. They're wrong. You were forged. You walk different now, not with pride. Exactly. But with presence. A knowing in your bones that the worst thing already happened, and you're still here. You develop odd habits. You always carry snacks, raisins, crackers, a little chocolate bar in your glove box. Not because you expect another disaster, but because it's a quiet kind of control. You count exits in buildings. You never waste food. You pause every time someone complains about being starving. And once, just once, you snap at someone who leaves meat on their plate. Some of us had to become monsters for less. You say, then you leave, embarrassed, but also a little relieved. You write letters you never send to the families, to the dead, even to yourself. They stay tucked in drawers or burned in fireplaces. You dream in white sometimes, endless white, but in the dreams now, you're not afraid. You're just walking peacefully. The world around you has changed. Planes have better tracking systems. Emergency kits come standard. There are documentaries, museum exhibits, survival podcasts. You guest star on one. Once, your voice cracks. The host cries. You tell the same story again. But every time, a different detail surfaces something small. A laugh you forgot. A snowflake caught on someone's eyelash. A joke scribbled on the fuselage wall in pencil if found. Please feed me pizza. Historians still argue whether your story has a lesson, whether it was divine providence, pure luck, or a grim experiment in human instinct. Some say you were brave, others say you were desperate. Some say both. You say you were just there. Here's your quirky detail. There's a tiny village in the Andes where they light candles every year for the 16 of you who walked out alive. No one told them to. They just do, like it matters, like you matter. And maybe you do. You become friends with a historian once, a kind-eyed woman who studies memory and trauma. She's fascinated by your case, but never exploits it. She asks gently, "What do you wish people knew?" And you say, without thinking, that we didn't just survive. We loved. We helped. We told stories. We sang. She writes that down, tears in her eyes. You don't seek fame, but it finds you now and then. You're on a list somewhere, top 10 greatest survival stories. Number 4, just behind Shackleton and the Donner Party. You smile at that? The Donner Party didn't have nylon snow pants or Nando Parado. Speaking of Nando, he calls every Christmas. You trade jokes, updates, memories. He still hikes, still tells the story with fire in his chest. You admire that. You're quieter, but not silent. Your children ask questions as they grow. Carefully, nervously, you answer honestly. One of them, your eldest, asks, "Would you have let me die if it were reversed?" You sit with that for a long time. Then you say, "I would have done everything I could to save you, even if it meant dying myself. And if I couldn't save you, I would have lived." So your story didn't end there. That seems to satisfy them. For now, one day, you visit a school. A little girl in the front row raises her hand and says, "I think you're really brave and really kind." You smile, but inside, something loosens, something breathes, because kindness isn't what the newspapers said. It isn't what people remember about survival, but maybe it should be. You return to the mountains one last time, alone, no cameras, no tour groups, just you, the colds, and memory. You sit at the edge of the ridge where Nando and Roberto began their journey toward rescue. You trace the path with your eyes, heart stuttering. Then, slowly, you place something small in the snow, a scrap of cloth from the plain. You kept it all these years, not out of morbidity, but because it was real. Proof, anchor. You whisper, "Thank you," and as the wind picks up, the cloth flutters, then settles, like a sigh, like a release. You walk back down, lighter, maybe not whole, but healed enough, because the mountain took everything from you once, and then, impossibly, gave something back. The older you get, the more quietly the memories sit beside you. They don't knock down the door anymore. They don't jolt you awake at 2 a.m., gasping, heart racing. Instead, they arrive like old acquaintances, tired, familiar, uninvited, but not entirely unwelcome. You find that people rarely ask about the cold anymore, or the hunger, or the bodies. They ask about you, how you healed, what it all means, whether it was worth it. You never know how to answer. You've learned that survival isn't a finish line. It's a lifetime of reckonings. There are anniversaries now. Some you remember, others sneak up on you. A song, a scent, a snowfall. You could be holding a spoonful of soup, and suddenly you're 20 again, knees buried in snow, wondering if the wind will ever stop screaming. But there's gentleness, too. You start seeing beauty in strange places, the steam rising off a cup of tea, the rustle of sheets in the morning, the way your grandchild's laughter ricochets off kitchen walls like bells. You speak at fewer events now. Your voice shakes more. But when you do speak, people listen in a different way, not just with their ears, but with their bodies. Their posture softens, their eyes hold still. You realize they're not just hearing a story, they're feeling it. One day, a young woman approaches you after a talk. She's trembling, not from cold, but something deeper. She says, "I lost someone, not to a mountain, but to addiction. And your story, it helped me let go of the guilt." You hug her, and later, when you're alone in your car, you cry harder than you have in years, because you've realized something. Your survival is no longer just yours. It belongs to people who'll never climb mountains, never face avalanches, but they're surviving just the same in hospital waiting rooms, in grief, in loneliness, in silence. Your story is a kind of mirror, and for the first time, you're okay with that. You reconnect with some of the other survivors as time passes. Gray hair, slower steps. You gather for the 50th anniversary. There's laughter and wine, and a lot of remember when's, but there's also silence. You each find moments to slip away, sit alone, stare at the sky. One of your friends, the one who used to hum lullabies to calm the group, turns to you and says, "Sometimes I miss the mountain." You nod, because you do too. Not the colds, not the hunger, but the clarity, the way life stripped down to its bones. Eat, sleep, breathe, protect. You say, "We were most ourselves up there." He says, "I was never braver." You clink glasses. Historians still debate the ethics of what you did. Articles keep coming. College students write essays. One professor calls it a case study in moral relativism. Another calls it a blueprint for resilience. You stop reading those things. They don't know the smell of burning rubber. They don't know the way snow can taste like nothing and everything at once. They don't know the ache of watching someone die and wondering if that will be your tomorrow. They weren't there, and that's okay, because you saw death and chose life. Again and again and again. You weren't a hero. You weren't a monster. You were human. That's enough. You pass on what you can to your children, your grandchildren, not just the facts, but the feelings, the importance of kindness, of small mercies, of telling stories, even when they hurt, especially when they hurt, because every time you tell the story, the mountain gets a little less quiet and a little less cold, and every time someone listens, the world feels a little warmer. Here's your final fringe fact. There's a tree growing near the crash site now. Just one. No one planted it. No one knows how it survives. But it stands there, alone, alive, and maybe that's enough of a metaphor for one lifetime. You know your time is nearing, not in a morbid way, just a gentle awareness. Your steps are slower, your thoughts wander more, but you feel full, like a story well told. Before you go, you write a letter, You don't address it. You just write. If you're reading this, it means you've survived something too. Maybe not a plane crash, but something. So remember, be gentle with yourself, be gentle with others, and never underestimate the will to live. It's messy, it's painful, but it's also beautiful. And so are you. You seal it, place it in your journal, and close the book. Now, take a deep breath. Let it go slowly, like fog lifting off the edge of a sleeping mountain. You've made it through the storm, through the noise, through the impossible choices no one ever wants to face. And here you are, quiet, safe, and warm, listening, breathing, alive. Maybe you feel a little heavier after this story. Maybe there's a stone sitting in your chest. That's okay. That weight is empathy. That's your heart, remembering what it means to care. Imagine the snow now, not brutal or suffocating, but soft, light, like a blanket over the world. The wind has calmed, the night is still, and that overhead, stars begin to glow in the high, thin air, each one a quiet witness to everything that happened. You're not on the mountain, but part of you walked there tonight, and you made it back. So wrap yourself up in the quiet. Let the soft background hum carry you further away from those white, wind-bitten slopes. Let the silence now be a comfort, not a threat. You are home. You are safe. The mountain is behind you. Tomorrow waits with warm sun and soft beds and laughter in rooms full of life. But for now, let the quiet hold you. Let the darkness be kind, and let yourself drift gently into sleep. The story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.